friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using Lawn Fawn's You Autumn Know, Scripty Autumn Sentiments, Let's Go Nuts, and Our Friendship Grows. So I've stamped those images out on Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock with Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, and I'm going to be coloring to match the color inspiration photo for our current Lawn Fanatics challenge using my Copic markers. So I'm actually going to start with the centers of my sunflowers, and I'm going to use some dull browns for those. I think they really look nice for the centers of those sunflowers. It adds a really nice fall hue to them. I'm using E44, E47, and E49 for those, although I will add in a fourth shade in just a little bit. And I want to create a little darker ring on the inside, like a large ring, which is just kind of resembling the way that sunflowers often grow, at least certain types of sunflowers. I know there's different varieties, but I was just thinking of the ones that used to be planted in a field near my house. They haven't planted them the last couple of years, hoping for this fall again, but we'll see. But I laid that in with the E49 and then began to blend that out with the E47 on both sides. And then I came in with the E44 to take that out even farther. And that's when I realized that I was going to need another lighter shade for the very center of that, just to add a bit more highlight. I like to have a lot of contrast in my coloring, so it's really up to you, but I just wanted to have that little extra highlight in there, so I did pull in the E43 for that. Next, I'm going to work on the petals of my sunflowers, so I'm going to use some yellow tones, Y13, Y15, and Y17. Plus, I'm going to add in YR24 as my darkest because that's really going to lend it like that golden mustardy yellow fall tone, which I think is really beautiful for sunflowers. It just really adds a lot of depth. So I'm taking that YR24 first and adding that to the base of each petal, also up the center line that is drawn there, and then also adding that to the petals that are behind. The petals that are behind are actually going to be a little bit darker. I won't be adding my highlight shade onto those because they are further back and would not be getting as much light. So I'm going to blend out the YR24 on all of those petals with the Y17 next. Those colors really blend nicely together. And once I have that laid in, I'm going to go with the Y15 next. The Y15 has a lot more brighter yellow tone in it, so it's going to make those leaves, or petals rather, really pop and bring in that more vibrant tone that is in that color inspiration photo. So I'm just working my way toward the ends of each of those petals and filling in the small ones that are behind, like I mentioned. And then once I'm done with that, I'm going to bring in the Y13, which is even more pure yellow and brighter, and that's really going to brighten up the edges of those petals and make that sunflower pop, I think. I really love this combo. I think it's really true to sunflowers, so definitely one to save and write down if you plan on coloring any sunflowers this fall season. So I'm just going to finish up this large sunflower and then move on to the smaller one, and I'm going to color that exactly the same. So I'm just going for like a traditional sunflower look. I know a lot of different sunflower varieties are in this typical golden yellow shade with the brown centers, although there are some different varieties that have more of like a rust colored leaf. And I was actually at the grocery store recently and I saw that they had bundles of pink sunflowers, which I think were so gorgeous. That would be stunning to use on a card. But for this one, I really wanted to stick to the traditional shades because the yellow was in the color palette for the inspiration. And it's typically what people think of when you think of sunflowers, when you see them on sweatshirts and blankets and things like that, they're typically in this combo. So I just wanted to have that really happy, bright, sunshiny yellow as like a predominant feature on this card. And they really do just make you smile, don't they? I think they're so beautiful. Once I finish up the sunflowers, I did want to have just a little bit of yellow into some of my fall leaves as well. So I will continue to use this combo in a few more places. I'm going to pick out a couple of the leaves in the pile and color those with the yellow combo. And then I want to also have some yellow on some of the larger leaves that are kind of going to be floating in the scene. And I'm not going to color the whole leaf for those because I want to have like multicolored leaves. So I'm just going to pick a little area on those to color in with this yellow combo, and I'll kind of like blend it with the other shades as I get to them. So you'll see what I mean pretty soon. But yeah, I'm just going to take a few of these leaves here and just add a few little spots of yellow. And then the 4 leaves in the center, those are actually going to be the sunflowers leaves. Those are from our Friendship Grows, so I'm going to leave those to color in green later on, so those will not get any of the multicolor treatment. So once I have this yellow combo everywhere that I wanted to put it, I'm going to switch things up and move on to like some coral reds. I'm using R35, R37, and R39. So I am going slightly more jewel toned from the color inspiration. So just a little bit darker and richer from the inspiration, but I think that's totally fine. I'm still in that same vein, you know, and like I said, it is an inspiration, so you can kind of take off from that a little bit as you will. I'm going to add that to one of the leaves in the pile and also to some of the falling leaves that I'll have floating down. And I did decide to add a 4th shade in on some of these as well. I just wanted to soften it a little bit and make it a little bit more true to that color inspiration. So I did add in the R32, which is going to be more of that coral tone, and just soften that combo up a bit. It'll also help it blend more into the yellow and the other tones that I decide to add next to it in just a little bit. I'm going to do another one of the leaves in the pile. I just wanted more pops of that really vibrant red, and I did throw in the R32 on that one as well. And then I'm going to move into the purple tones, and I went with V04, V05, V06, and V09. So again, I am using 4 shades, but it's just going to add that really dark richness with the V09 and then the soft shades with the V04 to kind of help it blend into the red tones. You can see as I was doing it right there, the V04 overlapping some of that R32 is just going to help those colors blend and fade seamlessly into each other. So you really don't see where one color ends and the other begins. It just really look like they are part of one leaf, like it should be. So again, I'm going to pick a couple leaves in the piles, and I added some of the purple into the red leaves just to zhuzh those up a bit and make them look extra special. And I'm going to pick another couple leaves here as well to do in the purple, or just one, I guess. But I will add some purple on to the extra 2 leaves there to combine with the other 2 shades that are in that inspiration photo. So I just wanted to have like a mix of different combos on each of the leaves. Not all of the leaves have all of the combos because I think that would be a little bit much. But I tried to do at least 3 or 4 shades on some of the leaves, and then some just have 2 and some are just 1. So it really just depended on what I was feeling, I guess. So you can really mix and match your colors. I think that's one of the fun things about coloring fall leaves, is this just so many different ways to do it, and you can really do some unusual shades like these aqua blues. I'm using BG11, BG53, and BG57 to bring out those aqua tones from the inspiration photo, and I honestly love the way the blue and the purple combine with the warmer hues that you would normally expect on fall leaves. I think they look really stunning. So I was totally in love with how these leaves were turning out. It was super fun. So I added that onto some of those leaves like I mentioned, and I am going to throw a little bit of this on the base of each of the green leaves for the sunflowers as well. I decided that kind of spur of the moment. Originally they were going to be just green, but I thought it kind of would just add a little bit extra to them and make them look special too. And why not? I was just having fun with those blue tones and wanted to keep using them because it is my favorite color, aqua blue. So I'm going to move on to my greens now using YG11, YG13, and YG17. I'll only throw a little bit of that onto the fall leaves because I am going to have that on the rest of the sunflowers leaves. So there will be enough pops of green on there that I didn't feel like I needed to have tons of it on the fall leaves. But I'm going to start at the top of all of the sunflower leaves with the YG17, blend out with the YG13, and then the YG11 is what's going to overlap with the BG11 so that they blend really nicely as well. And yeah, like I said, it was a total whim to throw that aqua blue in there just last minute, but I really love how they turned out, and I think it's always fun to do something a little bit unexpected in your coloring. So I'm going to move on to my squirrels, and I am going to do red squirrels because I just got back from Germany, and that is where my favorite red squirrels are from. They are my absolute favorite animal. Unfortunately, I didn't see any while I was there, but I did hear some chattering from the trees and scolding the dog that was laying beneath the tree. I think they wanted to maybe come down and do some foraging, but the dog was in their path, so they were just up in the tree chattering away. But anyway, I'm using E11, E13, E15, E17, and E18. Yes, I am using 5 shades for some little squirrels, but I'm mainly using the darkest 3 shades on most of the body, and then the lighter 2 shades on the lower part of the face and the belly, just to give them some extra dimension, so they're just not all one, level of coloring. So yeah, doing the red squirrels, love them. I think these are so adorable. These are some of my favorite Lawn Fawn images, so totally wanted to bring them in. Although if you're not a squirrel person, you could use mice instead because there are mice in the You Autumn Know stamp set already. But I just wanted to mix it up and do some red squirrels since I just got back from where they are from. So just finishing off those mice, like I said, adding that E11 on the lower part of the face and the belly, and then I'll go back to that R32 to color in the open mouth of the one and give both of them some rosy cheeks. And then I wanted to add in a little dot detail to my sunflowers. There's a couple little dots drawn in there already, but the dark coloring kind of covered them up. So I just went back to my E49 and my E47 and just added a few extra dots there right along the darkest area that I had colored, and then I trimmed these images out with their matching dies. So next I want to work on my background, and I'm using a piece of Bristol smooth surface cardstock for that and the Lawn Fawn cloudy stencil. And I'm going to bring in some Salvage Patina Distress Oxide Ink and start to add some clouds to my sky. So I'm just holding that stencil in place and blending off the edge of the stencil, using firmer pressure as I leave the stencil and then softer pressure as I get onto the paper. And then I wanted to dull that down a little bit with some speckled egg Distress Oxide ink as well, because the aqua blue in the inspiration photo is not like a super bright blue, and neither was the blue in the coloring. It had a little bit more of like a desaturated tone to it. So adding these 2 shades together I think worked really well. The speckled egg did bring it way down, so I did go back and add a little extra Salvage Patina on top and just work my way back and forth between those 2 shades. but I think once they are blended well, they really work nicely together. And sometimes like a really bright aqua blue sky can be too much for fall. It just depends on the color palette you're working with. So I think this duller aqua really worked nicely for a fall sky. I did flip my stencil over to the other side just to get a cloud pattern that was going in a different direction. So the one I'm working on now is the same one as the second one down. I just flipped the stencil over so that largest kind of hump of the cloud is facing, from the left instead of from the right. And then I just added a little extra color down at the bottom in case anything would show, so my clouds weren't stark white. But most of that's going to be covered up, I think, by my grass when we'll get to that in a minute. I'm going to press both of those inks onto an acrylic block and add some water to them to make them more fluid. And then I will pick that up with a thin paintbrush, tap it off the side of the block to get really small little splatters, and just add some interest and movement to that background. Once I have that speckled how I want it, I'll set that aside to dry, and then I'll work on my grass. Like I mentioned, I'm going to use the Slimline Grassy Hillside Borders as my die to trim down that top edge. You can also just use the regular Grassy Hillside Borders. I don't have those. I think the Slimline ones are great because they can do double duty. You can use it for a regular card or a Slimline card. So it just saves you a little money. That way you don't have to buy both sets unless you need them. But I'm going to use some Mowed Lawn and Lucky Clover for that because I wanted the brighter green, but I also wanted to mix in a little bit of a blue tone to match the coloring and have a little bit of that, the way I did those sunflower leaves with the aqua and the green. It's not really an aqua and a green, but that blue tone in the Lucky Clover kind of lends to that same feel. And then I splattered that as well and set that aside to dry. So I'm going to start working on my sentiment next, and I'm taking the word thanks from the Scripty Autumn Sentiments and stamping that out in VersaFine Onyx Black ink. It's just a super crisp black ink, and I'll also be using it for the rest of my sentiment, so I just wanted to use the same ink for both parts. I did that on a scrap piece of paper because I'm going to die cut that in a little bit. And then for the rest of the sentiment, I'm going to stamp directly onto my sky, and I'm just going to use the words filled with. So it'll say filled with thanks as my entire sentiment. So I'll set that aside to dry and pop my card base in my MISTI. I'm using speckled eggshell cardstock from Lawn Fawn and stamping in Merman ink. And the sentiment and the little leaf and the swirl is all from the You Autumn Know stamp set, and it just says gratitude from me to you. I trimmed down my background and my grass with the outside in Stitch Rectangle Stackables just to get a little bit of a stitching detail on the outside edge and to trim that panel down just the slightest bit so I'll get a nice frame with that speckled eggshell cardstock. I'm going to glue the grass down to the bottom of the sky and then glue this whole panel onto the front of my card, which is an A2 standard size card, so it's 4 1/4 wide by 5 1/2 tall. Then I can bring in my images and the stems for the Our Friendship Grows stamp set. It's one of the original stamp sets, so the stems don't have dies. So rather than try to cut those out, I just decided to trim out some thin strips of paper that I colored with the same markers that I used on the leaves for the sunflowers. And I'm just going to glue those onto the card and just trim them down to the size that I need, because you're only going to see a little bit of them anyway. They're going to be tucked underneath the sunflowers, and then they're going to be covered by the leaves. So the images I'm popping up with foam tape, but those stems I'm just using regular liquid glue to attach, so they kind of fade a little bit more into that hillside. And it also just helps the sunflower tops kind of be more prominent and, kind of sticking out into the viewer's perspective. At the right hand side, I'm going to put the pile of leaves and have my squirrel with his arms raised up, which Lawn Fawn calls the yay squirrel, which is so cute. I'm going to pop him in the top of the leaves, and then I'm laying out the leaves for my sunflowers, but I'm not attaching them yet. I have not removed the backing sheets from the foam tape because I want to make sure that I have the placement of everything else right first. So I'm just using them as kind of placeholders while I position everything else. I'm going to take my running squirrel and add that at the bottom of the larger sunflower, kind of leaping toward that pile of leaves. And I did have to move him a bit, so it did pull up some of the stem of that sunflower. I just wanted to position him slightly higher so that I would have room for one of these multicolored leaves over on the left corner to just pull that kind of rainbow of color over toward that corner of the card as well. And then floating down the right hand side of the card, I'm going to have the other colored leaves, saving some room for my sentiment right under the stamped part of that. And now that I have my kind of floating leaves positioned, I can go ahead and take the release papers off the sunflower leaves and pop those back into place right where I had them. Then I'm going to grab that thanks sentiment, and I decided that I did want it popped up because I wanted it to overlap my sunflower a little bit. So I did cut down a few super thin little strips of foam tape for the parts that needed to be popped up, and then just use liquid glue for the, like behind the T and the H that would overlap the sunflower, and also behind the S that would overlap that floating leaf stem, and just added that over on the right hand side. So my card looks nice and full and colorful, which I love. All that's left is to add a little bit of embellishment with my favorite Stardust stickles. I'm going to add that to each of the leaves, just kind of adding it here and there. I didn't coat them completely, but just added a good bit for that really vibrant sparkle. The great thing about Stardust stickles is that it doesn't cover up your coloring. It just kind of takes on the shade of what's ever underneath it. So it's definitely my favorite for that reason, because when you work that hard on all your coloring, you don't want to cover it up too much. I also added some of that stickles to the inside of the sunflower centers, just kind of on the bottom right and then going up the sides, but not completely covering that. And that is going to finish off this card. So I really hope you guys enjoyed it and are here for the fall content that is coming. There is another peek at the inside. If you did like this one, please be sure to hit that thumbs up button and leave me a comment down below. I love to hear from you guys. I also invite you to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell if you want to be alerted whenever I post a new video. All of the products I used today will be listed and linked for you in the description bar below in case you'd like to pick up anything for yourself. And I've also included 2 extra videos I thought you might also enjoy. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I hope you had a good one, and I will see you soon in another video. Bye-bye.